Stella Burkhalter, and this is my podcast, Living on the Edge of Art. I'm sort of a preacher without a pulpit, preaching to people without a church. Mostly, the purpose of this podcast is for those of us that are living on the edge of things, going through transition, going through change, maybe being stuck in the middle somewhere, and needing some encouragement. So hopefully I'm going to bring that to you today because I'm going to talk about chaos. So I'm living in a little bit of chaos. Maybe you are too. And the question that frequently gets asked of me, people will say, so what are you doing now? And then I kind of have this awkward well, cleaning closets mostly. We had a garage sale, and so I've kind of been going through stuff, and now I've got some empty spaces that I can fill with new stuff. But it's not very much fun to tell people that your life is cleaning your house, because that's not very fun. But I have my yarn here with me today, if you're watching the video version of this on YouTube. But I was thinking about the mess of organizing tangled up things and cleaning up messes. And I remember a time when I was in seminary and I was really struggling with how busy I was trying to raise kids and study and work and all the things I was doing. And it just felt like all I ever was doing was cleaning up messes. And it was exhausting. And every day there was a new mess. And I felt like every day I'd roll up my little balls of yarn and get my life together, and then it would somehow end up a mess again with tangles and confusion and stuff that I didn't know how to deal with. And I remember just being so frustrated by that, so frustrated that things weren't organized and orderly and things didn't seem to make sense. I'm feeling that in particular as I'm trying to record a little bit ahead of you, and I've been ODing on the news of the hurricane destruction in North Carolina and just looking at what people have to deal with and just feeling that. So definitely my problems are first world problems, and I'm not living in that kind of chaos, but it doesn't take much chaos to throw you off balance. And sometimes people don't understand that. And it can be hard to let people know the frustration that you're in. I was thinking about my friend Gwyneth. She would clean her house and then her family would come home and mess it up. And we were talking about that. And I certainly felt it because I have this special place in my kitchen, counter, get the counter all clean. And I'd clean the house, and every day my husband would come home and throw all his crap in that spot. And it would just find another place. Look, there's a key hook. There's, places you can put your stuff. Why here in this little clean spot? But it can be hard having people understand why that makes us so mad. And so I mentioned my friend Gwyneth. She and I were complaining about this, and she finally found a way to break through with her husband and explain it and talking the language he understood, because he was a builder. And she said, imagine you built a wall out of bricks. And it was a really good wall. You worked hard on it. You were proud of it. And every day you came to work, the wall was all crumbled. And you had to rebuild the wall over and over and over like Groundhog Day. And he went, oh. And so, chaos. We live with it. It frustrates us. Sometimes it frustrates us more than anyone can understand. And so I remember back when I was thinking about my yarn balls, I decided to find a new way to pray, to ask God to help me with the mess. And I'd lay in bed at night and I'd imagine myself holding up a snarl of yarn and just giving it to God. And I found peace because it seemed like every morning was a new day and my balls of yarn were fixed. And so that could be the end of this podcast, but obviously it's not, because I figured out that my yarn prayer wasn't a very good prayer. It was better. And that's what I want to talk about in this podcast. first I want to share a scripture. This is the first half of Psalm 42. As a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and behold the face of God? My tears have been my food day and night, while people continually say to me, where is your God? These things I remember as I pour out my soul, how I went with the throng and led them in procession to the house of God, with glad shouts and songs of thanksgiving, a multitude keeping festival. Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my help and my God. This is a psalm I've been holding on to as I think about that longing, the longing for order and peace, the longing for a place, a longing to not be in an in-between or at the edge of something, especially when you remember what it was like to be in a better place. And that question, why are you cast down, O my soul? Why are you sad? Why are you disquieted? Why are you restless? And as I sit with my yarn, that's the question, why is this disturbing me so much, this disorder? And can't I just trust God to make order out of the chaos? Can't I just be patient enough to wait? I've prayed, I've told God what I need. Can't I just be patient enough? What's wrong with me? Why can't I just be patient enough for God to work in my life or to answer my prayer? And so that psalm expresses that restlessness, that talking to your own soul, asking yourself, why do I feel so restless? And it led me to something else that I had a while back, some resources about living through chaos and mess and uncertainty. Back after the pandemic, there was a training that I got to go to with Susan Beaumont, and she wrote about leading in what she called liminal times, living in those in-between times. And it was a season where all of us were trying to deal with life after the pandemic, realizing that everything had changed radically. And so I wanted to find those notes to talk to you about. And as I did, I went through my planner. I do paper planners, and I found my planner from 2021. And it's really interesting to go back over your life to a season that you're out of, to go, wow, this is what I was doing, or this is what I was feeling, or I'm not there anymore in that place. I don't know how often you look back to those days of 2020 and 2021 and the craziness, because I think we need a little distance from it to process it. But there was one thing Susan Beaumont said. I wrote down these things, and some of them are in color in my planner. The thing that she said that just really stuck with me: avoid the compulsion to calm things down. Did you get that? Avoid the urge to calm things down. Avoid the urge to get your yarn all in a neat little ball. Let it be messy. That was a hard one for me, to let things be messy, to let my husband throw stuff on the counter and not freak out, to live in a time where you don't know what's next. Avoid the compulsion to calm things down. So this was the list that I wrote down, that I wrote in my planner, and that I looked at daily for a long, long time. She talked about being in these in-between times, and she said, number one, break habits. Use the in-between time as a time to break bad habits. And then she said, avoid the compulsion to calm things down. Let there be mess. because new things grow out of chaos. This is a good one that I highlighted. Get curious. Embrace the mystery. Admit you don't know. Maybe that's the hardest one of all, of letting our pride get in the way and just admitting we don't know. She recommended to look at where trends will lead, to clarify that there's some trends and where do we think they'll go. Look ahead. Here's another one I highlighted. Refuse quick fixes. That's a really hard one for me. I'm just going to fix it. I'm going to find a solution and it's going to be fixed. And sometimes, especially things like grief or learning or changing your life, don't happen quickly. Avoid quick fixes. And then she talked about recovering forgotten practices, recovering the things that are beautiful and good, that you love to do, that draw you closer to God, spiritual practices that you just sort of forgotten about. I wrote about and preached about my yarn ball prayer years ago, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. But I remember finding peace in that image of handing over my mess to God, asking God to help me, and having some peace that God was working it all out. But with a little perspective on that, and living through chaos a little bit, I realized that that was a really bad prayer. And I remember one day praying that prayer like I'd pray pretty much every night, and imagining that what God was saying to me is, why are you so obsessed with neat little balls? Why does everything have to be just so? What are you so afraid of about this? What if I want to be with you in this? What if I want to just be in this chaos with you? Because it's kind of fun when it's a mess and we don't know where it's going and it's bigger than us and full of possibility. I thought about when I was a little kid and I'd get a pile of leaves and play in them. And I wondered if God was asking and inviting me to just play in the middle of the mess and laugh at it and be in it. And I wondered why I needed things so orderly. In my time as a pastor, I spent a lot of time with retired people, older people, maybe people who are just adjusting to retirement. And I've learned that there's a whole lot of grief in that, a grief that surprised me to think, well, you're free, you don't have to work, you can do whatever you want, you've got this, you could, just travel and do all the things I wish I could do because I'm too busy to do them. And it took me a while to understand the great loss with retirement, the loss of structure, social status, identity. And so sometimes when we're going through change, we feel that kind of loss that retired people feel. I used to be this and I'm not that anymore. And so going through that change of pattern, that change of structure and order in our lives, anxiety is just going to come with it. So what I've been trying to do is just recognize anxiety as that annoying presence that's just there. Well, hello, good to see you. Well, not good to see you, but hello, there you are. I expected you. And just living in it. Because sometimes the best things happen in chaos. So as I was going through my old notes and things, I found something else that was really helpful, and I want to show it to you. Okay, so this is a book I found when I was going through books. It's by Jessica LaCrone, and it's called Out of Chaos: How God Makes New Things from the Broken Pieces of Life. And I got to hear Jessica LaCrone when this book was just coming out, and this was such a fascinating topic. She started writing a book about chaos before the pandemic, And it turned out to be just an amazing thing to watch, that there was already chaos in people's lives, but then afterwards how much more this book was needed. And I loved hearing her speak about it. And she talked about doing research for the book, and she said, I would ask people, she started out asking people, do you have chaos in your life? And then she realized everyone does. There was not a single person that she encountered that didn't say, no, I've got no chaos. And so then she started asking people, where is the chaos in your life? And having interesting discussions about it. And so I read the foreword and the introduction to this book, and just was so moved by it, how much it spoke to me. And I ended up back then, I think it was 2021, preaching about it. And then I realized, oh, I read that part, I loved it, and then I never read the rest. So I'm going to read the rest of it and let you know how it goes. But I really liked the foreword by A.J. Swoboda. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. I looked him up, and his podcast, he calls himself a low-level theologian. I love that. So I'm going to check that out too, and I'll let you know how that goes. But in his foreword, he talks about chaos, and he says that chaos is often God's way of making us who we are. Chaos is the palette from which God makes the world. And it is out of our own chaos that God forms and makes us into the people we are becoming. The modern Christian doesn't have much of an imagination to draw from when it comes to the difficulties of reality. In all my years of pastoral work, I've often seen people run away in the chaos of life, deconstructing their faith and abandoning their love for God. Why would God allow the suffering of a child? Why would God allow me to walk through a divorce? Why didn't God stop the trauma that was done to me as a child? Our own loss becomes the reason we abandon the God who made us. Too often we refuse to see chaos and difficulty as realms in which God can do any good work. And so in great disappointment, our faith shrinks or is abandoned altogether. Rather than running to God in our chaos, we abandon him once again. And he goes on to talk about the book as an invitation to a different way, the way of Jesus. For Jesus does not call us out of a world of chaos. Rather, in Jesus, God enters our world of chaos to meet us there. And it is into the chaos of our difficulties, our pain, our responsibility, our failure, our day-to-day challenges that God calls us. That's what incarnation is. And so I want to close with the lines from the creation story, the lines that remind us that God works best in chaos, creates in chaos. Hear these words from the very beginning of the Bible, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. There's been so much written about this passage, so much written about how to translate this passage. Hebrew has so many fewer words than English, and so there's a lot of ways a single word can be translated. So that Spirit of God, the wind of God, the breath of God, the Holy Spirit, hovering, vibrating over the water. And that's what God does. Hover over us, sing over us, dance over us in the darkness and in the void, waiting to create. So I am trying to be in that chaos and to look for God hovering around, to realize that chaos means the opening of new possibilities, things getting unstuck that have been stuck for a long time. I'm trying to look at my lack of certainty of schedule, my unknowing the future as God's palette, the place God works, looking for God and dreaming of how my life can be different at the edge of art. And so if you're struggling with the same kinds of things, I want to invite you as well to just play with God in the mess that is your life. Look for the Spirit hovering and doing very creative work and living in the delight of it. And so God bless you on that journey. And I'll be back again from out here on the edge of art.